Homer Bailey. Ground ball to third. Frazier gloves. Throw to first, and Homer Bailey, for the second time in his major league career, has tossed a no-hitter. Oh, gosh. Are you kidding me? Holy moly, the second player in major league history to hit 7 home runs in the first 10 games. In the air, and the Reds win it. What a dream beginning to the career of Jay Bruce.
All right, what is going on? Welcome to a very special edition of Chatterbox Reds. We're going to talk about the Reds' first 3 draft picks here in the 2023 draft. I was going to record just a little bit with my guy Elijah for the podcast tomorrow. I was like, you know what? Why don't we just do a live stream real quick? This will also be put into the podcast tomorrow. But Elijah Evans of Just Baseball kind of joined us yesterday. He predicted the Reds' first pick. So you know what? When you predict the right pick, we bring you back the next day. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. It's been a fun night. I've been doing draft stuff all night. It's been exciting. You know, I'm not happy about my White Sox, but I am happy about your Reds. So it's perfect that we're here to talk about the Reds and not the White Sox. Works out.
Very good, very good. Well, full transparency, like I've said many times, I do not follow the draft closely. That's why I rely heavily on guys like Elijah. Bryce Spalding was hoping to join us tonight. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to. Had some sick family members, but I'm going to read some of his tweets for you to kind of get us through this and have a good time. So thanks, everyone, for joining us. Let's jump right into the Reds' first pick. Rhett Lowder. Pick number 7 overall, right-handed pitcher out of Wake Forest. Elijah, what's your thoughts on Lowder?
I love it. I said it yesterday for anybody that listened. I absolutely love it. Rhett Lowder was the logical pick for Cincinnati. They didn't stray from the course. A lot of teams tonight got a little creative. There was some crazy mix-up in the first round that nobody really expected, with a few guys going really early, some guys dropping back. But this was the pick all along, I thought. It makes a lot of sense. He's projectable, but he's also safe to a degree where I think you're getting something out of Rhett Lowder. It's not like a project, but he also does have ceiling that he could reach that's higher than where he's at right now. We saw him in the College World Series look like one of the best pitchers in college, hands down. He was toe-to-toe with Paul Skeens. He's a great pitcher. He's got one of the best changeups in all of college, probably the best changeup, honestly, and a good fastball. He's continued to develop. He's a guy who came in as a freshman in Wake Forest and struggled a lot, and as each year has just continued to take a whole other step forward. And he's just a guy who I expect to be a serious part of the Reds rotation sooner than later, honestly. So it's a great pick all around. I think it's a good move. And I think he's a pick that made sense. It made sense for the Reds' future, for the status of the roster, just really for everything going on with the Reds organization right now. Lowder is just the pick that made sense tonight.
Yeah, that changeup is disgusting. If you haven't seen I know a lot of people are retweeting Pitching Ninja, some of his old tweets about Lowder, pretty good. Looking through Lowder, I see that the Reds are probably going to get him at either slot value or slightly under slot value. First, real quickly, don't go too deep into the weeds. Can you explain what that means to folks, and then why that is important? And I think we'll talk more about that as we get to the Reds' third pick.
Yeah, exactly. So essentially, each MLB team has an allocated amount of money they can spend in terms of the bonuses given to draft picks. And each pick throughout the draft has a value, which is like the given value for that pick. So starting with the first pick this year, it was $9.7 million, is the slot value of the bonus for the Pirates at the first overall pick. And then it scales down from there. So while those values, they matter, right? The Reds is $6.28 million for the 7th pick, and they matter, but it depends a lot on where your team is at, right? So the Pirates chose to go away from Dylan Cruz, and Dylan Cruz didn't want to go there. Frankly, it was a whole mess, but they were able to get Paul Skeens for below the slot value because Skeens was expected to go, at a different. Skeens was expecting to go second or third, likely second. So he was willing to take a little less than the slot value of the 1 pick because he was still getting more than the slot value of the 2 pick. So it basically comes down to, with Lowder, I think he was projected right around 7. So my guess is he ends up signing right around slot value. But what's interesting is with, we'll get to it a little later with the second guys, the way you allocate your money can affect your future picks. So, going a little bit under slot with somebody who is, not necessarily projected at that range can allow you to then go over slot and chase a guy that is a little bit later than he should have gotten drafted, somebody projected earlier, like the Reds did with their third pick that we're going to get to soon. So it changes the way you look at things, but the MLB draft isn't like other drafts where you can sign guys to whatever types of deals you want. It's very specified in the budget you have. So you have to think of it as almost a puzzle in a way where you're planning your picks based on the money you can give, but you have to know you gotta go under to get some guys over and vice versa. So the Reds, Lowder is about slot. I think you could get him a little under, but I think he's right about the 7. He deserves that type of money. He's proven it. He's a college guy. He's a little bit older. He's established. I mean, I think he's right around the 7th pick. And he was, again, as I said, it was the pick that made sense in every way for the Reds tonight.
And then the question that is on everyone's mind when you draft a college pitcher, 7th overall, how quickly could we see this guy? I'm assuming no chance of a Brandon Finnegan pitching in the World Series for the Reds this year. We'll be really optimistic. But he probably is a guy that would go pretty quickly through the system, right?
Yeah, pretty quickly for sure. Not this year. He's not that. Also, just because he threw a lot this year for Wake Forest, you don't want to push his innings this year. I think he's going to be pretty limited in terms of the innings you're going to see from him down the stretch. I know guys you're going to want to see him get up to AA, whatever, which would be great, of course. But I think they're going to be very chilled with his innings, a bit similar to Paul Skeens in Pittsburgh. I think they're gonna definitely keep it easy on him this season. But I think, if he shows well at the low A level, or they might keep him at the ACL for the complex league for a little bit. And then move him up. But I could see him making a few starts in low A, then potentially high A. I think next year you see him start at a high A, maybe even a AA, depending on how the rest of this year goes. I mean, I think down the stretch next year, if not definitely starting in rotation by 25. I know that's not super soon. And I know people, obviously the Reds want pitching right now. I know Reds fans are really trying to get another key arm or two to hone in on, and it's coming. He's going to be there, and he's going to be durable. That's the thing about Lowder. He's a guy that projects to be a very durable, solid starter. The upside is there. He could get to an ace level. I don't know if he is that. I don't know if you're not expecting him. There's very few pitching prospects you're expecting to be a top rotation guy. That's just the reality is in this draft. That's Paul Skeens, and that's kind of it. Lowder could get there. He has that ability. I think you can really rely on him being a stable, consistent middle rotation guy with the upside of a 2-starter.
Well, talking about getting more pitching, falls right into the Reds' second pick 38 overall in the competitive balance round. Ty Floyd, right-handed pitcher, another college arm out of LSU. Saw some incredible highlights out of Floyd, but maybe some inconsistency.
Yeah. Floyd's a guy. I mean, I don't think he was expected to go nearly this high. He got a lot of helium from the College World Series, especially. He had one of the most insane College World Series performances ever a few weeks ago with 17 strikeouts, which was unbelievable. And he's a beast. He's a guy that knows how to pitch, I think. I mean, I watched him. I didn't know a ton about him prior to the College World Series, in all honesty. And I saw him in the College World Series, and he just got outs. He looks defined. He's smart about his location. He's got really good spin rates on some of his stuff. He's just a fun pitcher all around. I don't think he's not a guy you're drafting for the projectability, and I think he's probably an underslot here, actually, like we were talking about. I think he probably saved a decent amount of money on this pick. Let me pull this up right now. I'm going to see what his slot value is because I'm curious, but I think his slot value is $2.26 million. I think you're going to get him pretty decently under that, which allows you room for this third pick that we're going to talk about soon. But I think he's a guy that was originally, a few months ago, I think he was around like a third, fourth round guy for the most part, and getting him, the basically, I don't know, the first between the first and second round essentially is a really nice spot for him. And I think it's a guy who you project to be something, right? I don't think you're not looking at a high ceiling guy, but you're looking at a guy that has a lot of pitchability. He's got really good spin rates. He's not going to overwhelm you with his stuff. He doesn't have a ton of velo or anything crazy, but he's just an all around really solid pitcher. And I think he's a guy that could be a really good organizational piece to have. You could see him being a 4 or 5 starter and just a solid all around pitcher. In most ways, pitchability, his spin rates have ticked up a lot this past year. You could see a little bit more in the tank, but honestly, you're getting a guy who's a gamer. He knows he's been in these big moments. It's fun to get some of those guys in college. I know everybody loves projectability, and so do I, and that's a big thing. But it's also, there's something to be said for a guy who just was really good in the SEC, especially down the stretch and in the playoffs. I mean, he stepped up in a huge moment for LSU this year in the College World Series. So it's a fun pick, and it saves you some money too.
Yeah, 17 strikeouts came against Florida. That's a pretty good college program, right? That's not. It wasn't 17 strikeouts against a D2 program or anything like that. So, to do it on that stage certainly shows that. Got a really good question. Does Floyd project as a reliever? I mean, I would assume the Reds are probably wanting him to start and going to explore every avenue there. But do you think there's probably a more realistic chance that he probably ends up being a reliever?
I think he's a starter, honestly. I do. I think that there's a chance he's a reliever. I think when you're drafting anybody out of college, you need to see a little bit more of what they can do down the line and see kind of how he develops, especially with the secondary pitches. I know his fastball has worked really well, but I think being a fastball heavy guy with the type of spin that he has on his fastball and he's got a lot of vertical break on his fastballs that I was looking at, and just a consistent pitch enough where you're not planning a high fastball usage with a lot of spin to be a reliever. I mean, that's a guy you want to start. He's throwing his fastball more than 50% of the time. It's a good fastball. So for him, it's really just going to be about developing those secondaries, getting a little bit more consistent with his delivery and just all of his approach. But I think he can be a starter realistically. I mean, if worst case, he's a multi-inning kind of Swiss Army knife reliever, that's not a bad option with this type of pick, especially an underslot pick here. But I think you plan him as a starter and you see what happens. But I think he can very legitimately be a back end starter.
All right. And then the last pick of the night for the Reds, second round pick number 43, Sammy Stafura, a shortstop, 18 years old out of New York. This is the guy that was, I know, ranked. I think MLB had him ranked like number 32 as the 32 second best player. Yeah. He went at 43, so obviously that's quite a bit further than maybe his value, and this is where that slot value we're talking about comes into play, right?
Right. Not only was he ranked 32, but he was actually projected in the 20s. He was projected to be in the first round pick. I think a lot of people had him linked to the Yankees, especially being a New York shortstop. They've been that type of, they go after that for a while. Just generally the East Coast shortstops. And I think, there was a lot of things I saw with him, anywhere from the range of like 23 to like 28 for Stafura. So I think that's 43 is a great pick, and he's definitely an overslot, but you were able to have that flexibility because of the Floyd pick. I don't think it's as much to Lowder. As I said, I think Lowder goes right around the slot. But Floyd's going to get a lot under slot. So then you look at the slot value of Stafura's pick is exactly $2 million at that pick. But I think Stafura actually ends up making more than Floyd is my guess, even though the slot is in favor of Floyd because he was drafted higher. But I think Stafura is a really good pick. I've seen a lot of really good things about him, and he's the opposite of Floyd, where you're looking at, an experienced guy with a little more floor. Stafura is the definition of upside. I mean, he's got some of the best wheels in high school. When I was looking into him a little bit more, he's supposedly has some of the best speed in all of high school this past year of all the high school prospects. A very good fielder overall. He played some outfield, but he's definitely seems like he can stick at shortstop. He's been really rangy. I could see him playing a multitude of positions, which for the Reds position right now is useful. And obviously he's a guy down the line, right? You said 18. That's crazy young. So he's a while away. This is not somebody unlike the other two, do not expect to see this guy for many years. But a lot of projectability, super fast, super rangy. He's got pop. I think there's a little bit of swing concern with his timing and his setup. I think he leans into the power a little bit more than consistent contact. So I think there's going to be some swing adjustments, but again, 18 with incredible speed, great athleticism, very useful and versatile fielding. So that's a guy you dream on. And if you're getting a guy 15 picks later than he probably should have gone or could have gone, and they're probably paying him for that. Chances are the Reds had planned this a little bit ahead of time. Once they saw he fell to a certain point, they said, we're going to pay you over slot at this pick. So it's, I think it's a really solid pick. You got a talent. You got a first round level talent essentially at the 43rd pick. So that's a great situation to be in, and a guy who has a lot to dream on. A shortstop, a guy who's played shortstop, who also played some outfield, could probably play all over the place. With that type of athleticism is a really exciting player. I like him a lot.
At that high of a pick, there wouldn't be any signability concerns, right? I mean,
not at all.
You're pretty confident that you can get it done.
Yeah,
it's usually
they're going to sign him.
The fifth round, those are the guys that
even four sometimes it can depend, but they're going to sign him. If if it was a different situation, I think maybe it's different if they, if they didn't have the money to give him, but they're going to overslot him. He's going to get more than the slot value for sure, given his pedigree, and he'll sign. I mean, again, I'm not going to promise this. I don't want everybody getting mad at me if there's some crazy situation where he hasn't signed, because it happens. We saw it with Kumar Rocker. We've seen it with other guys, whatever. It happens, but very likely he will sign. Yes.
And Kumar Rocker was an injury thing. It wasn't
and it can happen sometimes for other reasons. There's crazy. The MLB draft is tricky like that. It's not like other things, like especially with high school guys, like you never fully know. But it we'll see.
Good question here from Eric. I don't know if you know the answer to this. Could they use the shortstop in this draft as a trade in an upcoming trade deadline?
Actually,
you have to wait, right? Isn't there like a
you have to wait a certain amount? I don't think it's the deadline. I think it would have to be in the offseason when they could actually trade him.
Because Dansby Swanson was this situation, right? Where the Diamondbacks drafted him and then they traded him. I feel like they waited till like they traded him like right at the first time they could, but I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. After the World Series they were drafted. Yeah, that makes sense. So it would have to be the offseason. Yeah.
Okay.
Which makes sense. And they wouldn't bother trading him. I don't know how much I'm sure you've talked about this a ton, what the Reds are going to do at the deadline. And I'm very interested. I was going to talk to Clay Snowden, also at Just Baseball, we were going to do some stuff in the next few weeks about deadline and stuff. And just, I don't even know exactly. It's going to be interesting to see. But I really believe the Reds path right now. I do. I say this from somebody who I'm not a Reds fan. I'm rooting for the Reds because I enjoy them and they're a fun young team. But I'm not a Reds fan at all. I have no emotional attachment necessarily. But I think the Reds are in a really good direction. And in my opinion, they can adding's okay, but I think they should really maintain the core of these players, not mess it up. I get the India thing. I'll leave that aside. But in terms of the prospects, I don't see a reason. I've seen way too much things about trading. There comes the India comments. I'm sure about it. But I've seen way too many things about trading CES or Marte, and there's just no reason at this deadline. It's not worth it. The Atlanta Braves are a train. I know people don't want to hear me say that. The Reds can make noise. When you get in the playoffs, anything can happen. But I don't know if this is the year for a World Series for the Reds, in which case do not trade your top two minor league guys that are still going to be legit. That's my opinion, but that's just my 2 cents.
I don't even think if they had a clearer path, they should be trading away their top prospects. I think sustainability needs to be key, and whatever else falls in. All right, this is a wild question. What's your thoughts on Tim Anderson?
Don't get me started on this. I will leave it as this. I am personally ready for the White Sox to move on. I think I loved him for many years. He's been a staple of my White Sox fandom. I think the Sox need to change things, and he's one of the pieces that we should be looking to trade before his contract's up.
Weren't expecting that question on this stream tonight.
Yeah, right. Seriously.
All right. Well, Elijah, you're the best. Thanks for coming on. Thanks everyone for joining us at almost midnight Eastern here.
Let me ask you this, Nick. I'll flip it to you real quick before I get going. What's your expectation? I want to hear this deadline for you. What would you add? How much would you add? I'm curious.
Okay. So we actually talked a little bit about this on our post. I think it hinges on how healthy is Green and Lodolo. And I don't know the answer to that. If the Reds feel pretty confident that those two guys are healthy, I don't know if the Reds should trade for a starting pitcher at all. I think they might be better off trading for several quality relievers because A, you can get them for a lot cheaper. And B, you're probably going to get inning for inning a more quality pitcher as a reliever than, someone like, well, all due respect, Lance Lynn or whoever else. So it's a big if those guys are they feel confident about their health. I think you might be better off just going all in on the relievers. You're not going to, if you make the playoffs, you're going to be playing a 3-game series. You already have the 3 starters you want: Green, Lodolo, Abbott. I don't know necessarily. I don't know if it's as dire of a situation for starting pitching as it's made out to be.
Interesting. I don't disagree with you. I think there's something to be said for that, but there's also, adding pitching can't hurt. I'll flip it to you. I'll say Lucas Giolito for Carlos Jorge.
No chance.
That's my offer.
No chance. Nah, I'm not. You're not touching Carlos Jorge. You keep your dirty
come
paws off of
on.
Carlos Jorge. He's
I
a
was
star. He's a
hoping it would
star.
work. I'm just saying. I mean, that's not like you're trading one of the top guys. I'm just saying. I don't know.
I don't
Either
know,
way,
man.
it's the Sox are terrible, but it's besides the point.
I've seen some people who think Carlos Jorge is
I
a
know.
legit top 100
Oh,
prospect. So.
people are high on him for sure. I mean, that's the thing about the Red system is deep. It really is. I know my RM Layton, who's the head over at Just Baseball, he's insanely high on Sal Stewart right now. He's been talking up some serious Sal Stewart lately. On top of, obviously Arroyo has been good. Chase Petty's fun at CES has been ridiculous. I mean, Phillips has looked, and there's layers to it.
Hector
the
Rodriguez.
system's in a good place. Yeah. The system's in a good place overall. What I was going to say about the deadline, I mean, I think adding one starter is fine, but I'm not going all in on a big starter. Like you said, it's not worth it. I think you adding a starter, I mean, a Giolito, Jorge was being ambitious of me. But generally speaking, adding an affordable, decent pitcher of that caliber, I think would be a good move just because it doesn't hurt. And some of the guys you have pitching now, even, are just a little, you're not confident necessarily. I mean, I know obviously if Lodolo and Green are back, that's great. But I think, adding a pitcher wouldn't be bad, but I do agree, don't go all in. Let some of these guys don't blow your top prospects. Relievers are easy to add. You can throw in a low A guy and get a decent reliever on the trade market. So I'm with you.
All right. Well, Elijah, appreciate it very much. Remind the folks where they can check out your work.
Elijah EV8 on Twitter. You can check it out. I'm justbaseball.com. My author page is there. I write a lot of various stuff. I'll be doing a lot of trade deadline coverage this year. So I'll probably be running the deadline tracker. We'll have every update on all the deadline moves and everything, the off season, every type of coverage. So yeah, read my stuff, check it out. The Just Baseball's got good stuff. And then keep watching Nick. Nick's the best for the Reds.
We'll call it that. All right. Well, yeah. Thanks, everyone. Like the stream on your way out. New podcast every day this week during the All-Star break. No video. We'll be back Friday night as good as ever for the second half of the season. Looking forward to it. Elijah, you're the man. Thanks for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Have a good one.